Next from Chicago, Representative Peter Roskam speaks at a Heartland Institute event at the Union League Club of Chicago about the threats to Medicare Part D and the state of health care in America. This runs about 30 minutes.
Watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name and politics is our game. And we will be doing lots of politics and public policy this evening because we take you to Congressman Peter Roskam. He, of course, is he's the congressman from the 6th Congressional District. He is from Wheaton. He is a Republican. He is a conservative. But most important, he spoke May 29th, or he spoke on May 29th, year 2013, to the Heartland Institute at the Union League Club of Chicago, and he was speaking about the prescription drug entitlement plan. And Joe Best, who's the president and CEO of the Heartland Institute, was there and asked a question. You'll see Joe on this program as well. Joe is the founder and president, as I said, of the Heartland Institute, founded almost 30 years ago. Stands for free markets, libertarian thought. And, you know, how do things work when you do have free markets, when you do have liberty, when you do have a respect for individuals and small government, and that government that's governed least, governed best, and the lowest level of government? All that comes together this evening when you watch Congressman Peter Roskam talk about that entitlement plan. Is it competition? Does it show how free markets work? Does it show how government can use free markets to accomplish good things? We discuss, you decide. Come back next week and every week to see this kind of program, this kind of discussion, this kind of intense thought at Public Affairs.
Additionally, I think that you can actually see an example right here in Illinois of the kind of idiocy in sort of putting these negotiation powers with the government. You can see it in the dispensing fees that are negotiated through Illinois' Medicaid fee-for-service program. It currently pays pharmacies $4.60 per prescription, which compared to the privately negotiated rate for dispensing fees, that's only about $2. And it just gives you a perspective on how private industry negotiating back and forth can actually achieve savings, not just for the taxpayers, but for the people who are actually paying for the benefit. Part D shows the model that we should take when it comes to the approach of entitlements, which is essentially that we should give people more access. We should also give them an exposure to the decisions that they're making, so that they shouldn't have essentially no attachment to the price of the good that they are purchasing. You know, one of the lines that I use and have used, you know, across the country is that no one cares how much something costs if someone else is paying for it. And I think that that's very true of the entitlement expansion of Obamacare generally. You can't insulate drug price negotiation from the private sector without having negative outcomes for the people involved and inevitably going down the road to rationing, to fewer drugs, and to having that decision be made not in people's homes, not in terms of their own finances, but in Washington and in the government. That's something that we think is very negative for everybody involved and results in worse outcomes for everyone. So with that, I would like to introduce Congressman Peter Roskam, who is our honored guest today. The congressman obviously represents the 6th District. He has a long history in Illinois in both the House and the Senate, and we're honored to have him join us today to say a few more words about this program. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the introduction and the opportunity to be together today and to have a discussion about these issues that have so much attention and are really the focus of so much of the spending debate. What I'd like to do is take a running start at this. In order to take a running start at where we are in this healthcare debate, you really have to go back right after World War II, and it's pretty well settled doctrine that post-World War II, the federal government made, upon reflection, a bad decision. And the decision was to impose wage and price controls on the economy, which didn't work out too well. And what ended up happening as a result was the natural relationship between insured and insurer became broken. And here's what I mean by that. You had an employer that was out in the marketplace that wanted to compete and wanted to offer a position to somebody, but they were bound by wage controls for what they could offer. And so the smart employer said, here's what I can do. I can offer you an insurance policy, a health insurance policy, to induce you to come forward and to come to work for me. Out of that has built and is the foundation upon our current healthcare system is rested. And essentially what happened, if you reflect back, you recognize that it was the beginning of a fractured relationship. Or, said another way, If you have any other insurable interest in your life or in your business, it is a comparatively rational cost expenditure. What did I just say? What I said was, if you're buying auto coverage or life coverage or liability coverage or disability coverage or one coverage or another, 9 chances out of 10, there is a fairly decent relationship between cost and exposure. So the reason that that's true is the marketplace is an unbelievably fierce disciplinarian on behalf of consumers. So if a consumer doesn't like insurance company A, they go to insurance company B. Look at all of the ways that we are lured by insurers to go at different directions in terms of our auto coverage. If you don't like this company, the other company down the street is only too quick and too happy to pick up that responsibility. Not so on the health side. And why is that? It's because Americans, by and large, are tethered to their health coverage and they don't have the ability to break out. Now, how does that all fit in to what we're talking about as it relates to Medicare? It fits in this way. Medicare is a program that over the years has largely been insulated from the power of market forces. It's been largely insulated. Remember during the healthcare debate, during Obamacare, there was a subtext that ran through the debate, and it was actually articulated a time or two during the discussion of the so-called public option. That was the public insurance company that was going to be set up to keep insurers, quote, honest, according to the advocates. And there was a view that said, well, surely the big carriers who are out there, they are unable, their overhead is so high that they're eating up all of these benefits that should go to someone else. And the net result was that there was an incredible desire to put forward the so-called public option. The story that wasn't told, though, was that these low overhead, comparatively low overhead rates that Medicare had were one of the cost drivers for Medicare fraud. In other words, Medicare's oversight over transactions was so low and so de minimis that ultimately it had the result of not being adequate in its oversight. So we have in our health coverage system today a system that has largely been insulated from the normal power of the marketplace. And as Ben mentioned, and he gave chapter and verse in very good detail, the power of allowing somebody the ability to make a decision, and then that decision, they receive the quality benefit, they receive the cost savings based on their decision and their decision alone. It's an incredibly powerful thing. The left abhors this idea. I mean, completely abhors it and is terribly threatened by it. And it's interesting when you go back and you look at the testimony and you look at the nature of the arguments that were made by opponents of Part D coverage, opponents who were arguing it against it from the left. They basically said that you're unwilling to make a promise to seniors as to what their coverage is actually going to cost. And the leading liberals at the time offered amendments in the House committee process and in the Senate committee process that would have, quote, guaranteed a certain rate. Well, here's the irony. When you review the record, when you look at their so-called guarantee, if you look at their wonderful plan for seniors, it is actually a higher dollar figure than the net cost today. And it is an absurdity. The presumption, frankly, it's tinged with arrogance, says that somehow the federal government or a federal bureaucrat in a gray building on the 7th floor on Independence Avenue down around a couple of carols by a water cooler has the ability to fix a price point in a more sophisticated, fair, and forthright fashion than the very people who are out purchasing this service. It is ridiculous. And it is that type of attitude that now I think many on the left find terribly threatening. They look at this and it's the role model. It is the foundation upon which The Ryan budget is built as it relates to Medicare. Now, there's an interesting thing that happened as the Medicare debate began to unfold, and particularly within these past 3 years with the passage of the Ryan budget. We were able to say, we're not coming up with some extreme experiment. This is not extreme. This is settled doctrine. This is proven with millions of seniors who have made these decisions, and now they've been able to count on it. Here's the objective data. Here's the objective findings. Here's the false claims of the left as it relates to this. And here's the proof that it is a solid program. So now we're able to go out and make the argument as it relates to what? Premium support. This is a premium support program, and it is the foundation upon which the entire Medicare debate is now founded. It's interesting because when we first started doing sessions in the whip's office in the Capitol on trying to build consensus internally, there were some members, and this was on the Ryan budget, there were some members that were reluctant because they felt like it would have an adverse impact on current seniors. Time and again, we were able to go back and demonstrate that actually, if we move forward on this basis, there is a foundation that has proven true. This is not a scholarly work alone. This is not, a posting on a website. This is not, an appendix to to Hayek's work or something. This is settled doctrine that even, as Ben mentioned, the Congressional Budget Office has had to revise which way? Down, 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 down. So, as you begin to think about this and move forward on it, it is the power of an idea, and it's an idea whose time has come. It also fits in to other themes that I think begin to unlock the Rubik's Cube of the larger healthcare debate. I want to go back to this Medicare overhead concept here for a minute, and that's this. Medicare has an antiquated system as it relates to fraud prevention, and it is a system that's become characterized as pay and chase. So, and I'm overstating this a little bit for the point of clarity, or the point of expediency, but I'm not mischaracterizing it. So, Medicare basically has a system that says we're going to pursue fraud, but we're going to really be pursuing fraud largely after the fraud occurs. Now, stick with me. Let me tell you a quick story. It's several years ago, my wife Elizabeth and I are traveling overseas, and we went to Budapest. And when we were in Budapest, we took a train in, and I decided, we got to the city center, we got to the train station, and we were going to go to the city center, and I said, hey, let's take a subway. It was a bad decision. We took the subway, and I decided to sort of try and save a few bucks, and we no sooner got down on the subway, but I was pickpocketed. Within the twinkling of an eye, I was pickpocketed. They saw me coming a mile away, they pickpocketed me, and I walk around with a wallet, kind of like this sort of deal. They got it, and they were off. We came back up the escalator, and I made the phone call, went to a hotel, and I called my credit card company. And I said, hey, I'm Peter Roskam. I don't know what my number is, but I just got pickpocketed. And they typed me in. You could hear them. Oh, yeah, we've got you. You're in Budapest. Yes, I am in Budapest. Well, we shut your card off already. I said, how did you know? And they said, we figured you were not buying $10,000 worth of tchotchke on the streets of Budapest today, and we knew it wasn't you. Okay, so how do they know that? They know that based on predictive modeling. In other words, incredibly sophisticated software and algorithms that figures out with some high level of sophistication, where is Peter Roskam? What is he buying? Is this a likely purchase? If it is, it's going to go through. And if it's not, we're going to save it. And if it's an inconvenience, he'll rub some dirt on it and get over it. And he'll make a call, and we'll let the purchase go through. Okay, so how is it that the private sector has that technology and that level of sophistication and is able to drive credit card fraud rates down to a de minimis level, and the federal government doesn't? The reason is It's the same worldview that animates this incredible feeling of being threatened by the power of the marketplace. The exact same folks that look at Medicare Part D as essentially a threat to their orthodoxy and a threat to their worldview, as opposed to something that they should embrace and run with. Instead, they recede back from these types of things that are out in the marketplace and that are so incredibly powerful. So here's where I think we're going with this. I think where we're going is this whole idea of an idea whose time has come is now upon us. And what is obvious to us in this room, it is an obvious thing. The Medicare Part D has over-delivered and under-promised. You talk about a program with a fairly low expectation after it was bannered about and beat up everybody conceivably under the sun, except the people that had the guts at the time to put it into place. Out of that now has come an example. And examples are very powerful things. Examples really can't be silenced. And particularly in this season where you've got the vast majority of Americans who haven't really made up their minds, whether they're Keynesians or supply-siders or this, that, or the other, they really have not marinated in all of this economic theory, but they know one thing. They know that if they are able to choose, they're able to make better choices than bureaucrats. They know that competition is a good thing. And they know that Obamacare has been a false claim in terms of its ability to be a restraining influence on anything except job growth. And so as we're moving forward, I think that what we've got to do is we've got to be very diligent in articulating the power of Medicare Part D, and really what it comes down to is an invitation for people to see it what it is. So if you look at Medicare Part D in the context of the great debate about entitlement reform, I think what becomes increasingly clear is that it is a gathering point when it comes down to it. And it is a gathering point, again, not around theory, not around articles, but it's a gathering point that is successful. So as we are so hungry in this country right now for remedies that can be a restraint for costs and an increase for choices, I think what we're going to continue to see is an attempt probably on the part of the left to try and debunk and recharacterize and redefine and revise the history of Medicare Part D. But I think when it all comes down to it, there is something that is incredibly powerful about an idea whose time has come. And we can build on this, and we can use it, and we've seen it in the Part D, we've seen it in the premium support debate so far. So we see what the left's approach is. The left's approach is the Independent Payment Advisory Board. That's their remedy for restraining costs. And there's a way to control costs. It's called rationing. Just unambiguously, rationing, yeah, that controls costs. Telling people no, that controls costs. Putting people in lines, that controls costs. Picking winners and losers, that controls costs. But where does that power lie? Do we want that power lying with the bureaucracy, the likes of which we see what that looks like with the IRS scandal notwithstanding? That type of authority to decide who gets to do these things in the instance of the Independent Payment Advisory Board, 15 unelected bureaucrats that you can't get to, that you can't influence, that are completely insulated from a political process, that is no remedy. And if that's basically what left offer in terms of cost restraint, that's nothing. It is a false claim. So I think we've got an opportunity. We've got to up our game. We've got to recognize that Medicare Part D has been an incredible success. When I do telephone town halls with seniors and I am talking about the House Republican effort to take on Medicare and to make sure that it's solvent in the future and to wrestle it to the ground to make sure that it is there and it makes sense, time and time and time again, I've gone back to Part D, explained that it is the analogous position of Part D, and you can feel the sense of relief at the other end of the phone where folks go, oh, Yeah, I like my prescription drug program. I got it. Well, do you like your ability to choose it? Yeah. Do you like your ability, it's not too complicated for you? No, you remember that? That it was going to be way too complicated? So here's what I'm saying. Let's build on Medicare Part D. Let's defend it, let's articulate it, let's learn more about it, let's advocate on its behalf, not for us necessarily, but for the hope that this theme and this competition and this promise can be kept, and it can be expanded to other elements of our entitlement system that are so desperate in need of this buoyancy. The question was, the fear of free markets tends to be just pervasive throughout the federal government, and an incredible reluctance on the part of regulators to trust the market and the market's ability to find the price point that makes sense. I agree with you completely. And I think the remedy is to continue to build on things like Part D. So here's what I mean by that. If we're able to make the connection, then we can teach. So overcharacterization is the death of persuasion, right? To overcharacterize something, it's like, it doesn't persuade people. But if simply we say, well, this works with seniors who've been the beneficiaries of this. Seniors are able to make good decisions about themselves. Seniors are an incredibly sophisticated group of people. And the fairness of Medicare Part D has reached the right balance, in that actually the carriers right now are competing tooth and nail for this business. And now what's the average? About $30 a month, when at the Liberals' amendments they were hoping to tag it at $45. I mean, that's an incredible failure and a missed price point on the part of the left. And thank goodness that they weren't successful in those amendments. So we need to take those things, unpack it, let folks know, that are not thinking about their economic worldview every day. They're just trying to figure out how to make it through life, and say, okay, look, this works here, this works there, and here's another opportunity for it to work. And I think that what we've got to do, those of us who share this view of the world, we need to invite people to come along. And I have found it far more persuasive to be persuasive as opposed to be preachy. Nobody wants to hear some economic lecture. They couldn't care less, by and large. They want to hear, well, show me where it's working. And the good news is we've got a great example of where it's working. There's going to be a prescription drug benefit that's coming. The political winds were such that there was going to be a prescription drug benefit coming. And if you accept that premise, then the whole question is, well, how do you want to fashion it? If you reject that premise and you say, well, it's not coming, we're okay, let's just fight it. And that's not irrational, but it wasn't true. You know what I mean? So it was coming, and then the question becomes, all right, so how do you fashion something that makes the most sense? And that is the continuous rub in public life, isn't it? It is the real challenge of trying to discern what's wise, what do you try and influence that you believe is inevitable, what do you oppose? And if you've got that figured out, you can call that ball and strike. I'm all ears. Because Jeff.
Congressman, is the Republican leadership making the argument that you just made here? Because I'm not aware of it, I'm fairly informed. Did I just miss it, or is it just overwhelmed by Benghazi and AP and James Rosen and the IRS?
The bandwidth for all of those things tends to crowd out more policy decisions about Part D discussions. But what's interesting is maybe it's not always articulated in the same way, but it is really baked into how the budget was formed that Ryan authored. So to the extent that the leadership was involved in that, and they obviously were, there was a real effort to build out from Part D onto premium support and to use that. And then also to go to the country in 2012. Because remember, this is in the context of a highly charged debate around Medicare. And I can remember times when consultants and pollsters and, quote, smart people when talking about Medicare, they would say, look, Mr. Candidate, here's your position on Medicare. If you want to win the election, you're for it. That's your position. And you want to support, protect, and defend Medicare, and then change the subject and get out and go talk about something else, talk about taxes or something else. Well, the House Republican majority that came in 2010 was a group that decided to make a difference. They literally came to Washington not to be somebody, but to do something. And they recognize there is no kindness in saying that you're supporting a program that's going to be insolvent in 12 years. And so rather than receding from that, they broke off from sort of the reigning inside the Beltway pundit talk, and they said, we think, we know what the right thing to do is, and we think we can do the right thing, persuade the public, and we can be returned to office. And that's the way it turned out. As you know, it became not a referendum on the House GOP plan, but a contrast with Obamacare. Obamacare said IPAB, the Independent Payment Advisory Board, which leads to rationing, makes them absolutely so uncomfortable and so full of consternation when you use that verb, but it is absolutely accurate in comparison to our view of the world, which says seniors have the ability, based on aptitude and support when appropriate, to make a good decision. We think we win that case. Clearly in the 2012 election, we won the senior vote, returned with the second biggest majority since World War II.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.